And joining us now on the day of Labour's manifesto launch is the Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Peter Kyle. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. I want to dive right into policy, because I noticed you spoke pretty powerfully about this data centre in Buckinghamshire that was rejected by this government. You said Labour would approve it, but I'm reading your manifesto now, and the way in which I think you would approve these things, like laboratories, digital infrastructure, gigafactories and whatever, is by designating these, central government, designating these as nationally significant. That's not planning reform at all. You're just fast-tracking certain projects that you pick and choose. Why not change the framework?
Thanks. It's great to be with you today. I'm sorry that the GB News cupcakes haven't arrived with me here. I'm sure having gone to all the trouble to bake them, you're sending them. They'll be on the way shortly. But actually, to your point about planning and data centres and labs and 1.5 million homes that we will build over the course of one parliament. Yes, of course, we will expedite. We will use the power of central government to have national priorities. But we have also done the second thing that you've asked. We will review every single national policy planning framework as soon as we can. We know that there are thousands of them. It will take time, but we are going to review the entire planning framework that we have, the structure we have. We will have priorities. I, as Secretary of State for the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, if I get the privilege to serve, will make sure that that department is orientated towards our national priorities, and we will push them forward, we will deliver them, we will strive to deliver the change our country needs.
It's just that when contentious issues are got through the House of Commons, and indeed the House of Lords, it's so much easier to get them through, even for a government with a big majority, if they're in the manifesto. You can point to the manifesto, say, look, we were elected on this, we must do this. And I'm reading your planning reform here. It just looks incredibly vague. You're not saying anything about what system you will have. You're not saying anything beyond we're going to have some development corporations, some new towns and some nationally significant projects. You're not saying that you're going to change the system. So I worry that when the Labour Party starts to do this, because most economists say this will be really good for growth if you can actually get planning reform passed, but you have no detail at all in your manifesto. You're going to run into the same problem Boris Johnson did when he and his big majority tried to get planning reform passed with Robert Jenrick. It failed.
In the manifesto or not, because don't forget that the Tories had things in their manifesto they still couldn't get the legislation through for. They had planning reform in their manifesto, and 3 bills were put forward for planning reform. All 3 of them never made it through.
Peter, this is what I'm saying. They didn't have any detail in their manifesto. Exactly as you don't have any detail in your manifesto. You're going to fail in the same way Boris Johnson did.
We have, in our manifesto, we have national priorities, and we have aligned in the manifesto, we have been explicit that we will have an industrial council that will independently set the priorities for our country, that will form an industrial strategy. For those priorities set out in our industrial strategy, which will span the decade of national renewal that we are standing on, for those priorities, all aspects of central government and right through to local government will be aligned to those priorities, and that includes planning. That is there in the manifesto. We will reform every single national planning framework. We will bring certain priorities into national priorities driven forward by central government, because our economy needs the building in it. We need data centres, we need lab space, we need homes being built. Yes, we will make sure that these things are driven through, and we will have any legislative changes we need, we will do. But many of them don't need planning legislative changes. So, for example, Tom, the example you gave could have happened within the law.
Yes, of course. And you can call it, the Secretary of State for local government can call these things in. But Peter Kyle, will you start the larger planning reform within the first 100 days?
We are going to get to work on this from day one. We're going to get to work on it straight away, because we want to make sure that we go forward with these 6 steps forward. Each of them will have a significant impact on people's lives, whilst getting cracking on changing the fundamentals of why our economy is not running properly, why we have zero growth and high taxation. And yes, planning reform will be part of it. But don't forget, the example that you gave was a minister that didn't like one building that could be seen from the M25.
Yeah.
So stopped a £2 billion investment into our economy, which would have created more than £500 million of investment into our economy every single year thereafter.
Okay, Peter Carl, I just want to get a question in on something else. Votes for 16, why?
Why? Because at the moment, right across in our own United Kingdom, 16, 17-year-olds are voting in the Scottish elections for their parliament, for the Senate elections in Wales, and across the Channel Islands.
Would you support MPs? Would you have MPs at 16?
Well, excuse me, but they are MPs, what I've just talked to you about. They are in a country within the United Kingdom. And nobody has ever stood up, including anybody in GB News has stood up and said that those elections are not valid or they've been distorted. So let's just go through what this means.
Elected MPs, Peter.
Over a 5-year period of a parliament, right now, if you turn 18 the week after a general election, then you're not voting till you're 23. So
But would you have MPs in the House of Commons aged 16? Politicians aged 16?
We're not seeking, we're not seeking to change that. But don't let's conflate the fact that being an MP is different from being able to vote for an MP. Being able to go into Tesco's and buy a product.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, but Peter Carl, thank you so much for being such a good sport.